Compiègne, France, the 22nd June 1940. Hitler met leaders of the French government and military to accept the nation's surrender. The Battle of France was over. All conflict between Germany and France would end 3 days later, on the 25th of June. Paris had fallen to the Germans on the 14th of June, declared an open city. It was untouched by the fighting and was swiftly occupied. Hitler, the artist and architect, wanted to visit Paris. A huge victory parade had been planned, but it was abandoned after advice from the German military, who feared it would be a prime target for British bombers. Instead, Hitler decided to stage a flying visit to Paris, armed with a list of tourist destinations that he wanted to see. It would be his first time in the City of Light, and he came not only as a sightseer, but as the conqueror of Western Europe. Only the British Empire still fought on against him. At the time of the French surrender, Hitler was at his forward headquarters in France, Wolfschlocht, where he had been directing the battle since the 6th of June 1940. 2 days after accepting the French surrender, Hitler made his trip to Paris. For the trip, Hitler had asked his personal architect, Albert Speer, to accompany him, along with architect Hermann Giesler. The rest of his entourage consisted of his usual staff, including his pilot and General Wilhelm Keitel of the High Command. Hitler's party also included his personal protection, officers from RSD, and a small detachment of FBK. Hitler being guarded by several different SS and army agencies, with sometimes overlapping responsibilities. The two civilians, Albert Speer and Hermann Giesler, were kitted out in field grey officers' uniforms so as not to stand out in the party. Preparations in Paris for the Führer's visit were minimal and streets were not guarded. Hitler's party in 5 large Mercedes cars drove straight into the city through deserted streets. The cars were all open-topped, and Hitler sat in the front passenger seat of one of the cars, and Albert Speer on jump seats behind. First stop on the tour was Hitler's favorite, the Paris Opera House. He knew the building from studying its blueprints, but was surprised by its beauty. Met on the steps by Colonel Hans Speider of the occupation forces, who in later years was a member of the anti-Hitler resistance amongst army circles. A French caretaker accompanied the group through deserted building and locking doors. Hitler's evident knowledge of the building impressed his entourage, as Albert Speer wrote in his book in 1970. Near the proscenium box, Hitler found a salon missing, remarked on it, and turned out to be right. The French attendant said that this room had been eliminated in the course of renovations many years ago, his eyes glittering with an excitement that struck me. The attendant, of course, had recognized the person he was guiding through the building. In a business-like, he showed us through the rooms. When we were at least ready to leave the building, Hitler whispered something to his officer, who took a 50-mark note from his wallet and went over to the attendant standing some distance away. But the man refused to take the money. Hitler tried a second time, sending Giesler over to him, but the man persisted in his refusal. He had only been doing his duty, he told Giesler. After leaving the opera, Hitler's convoy drove to the Medellin, where Hitler got out and viewed the church. The convoy now moved on to the Trocadero. Hitler got out to view the Eiffel Tower from a distance. He could not climb the tower because the French authorities had severed the lift cables shortly before the Germans had taken over Paris, and the Eiffel Tower remained out of commission until 1946. After many photos, the party stopped again at Les-Invalides, home of Emperor Napoleon I's grave. Hitler admired Napoleon, and there was much symbolism in his visit to this place. Hitler stood for a long time gazing down at Napoleon's burial place. The last stop on the tour was the giant white cathedral atop the hill. People going to church recognized Hitler, but ignored him. By 9 a.m., Hitler's party was back at the airport, preparing to depart. Hitler was happy. He turned to Speer and said, "It was the dream of my life to be permitted to see Paris. I cannot say how happy I am to have had that dream fulfilled today." And then he was gone, never to return. In the greatest of ironies, in 1944, as Allied forces approached Paris, Hitler ordered the city destroyed. Fortunately for history, the German general commanding the city could not bring himself to do it, and Paris survived the war untouched.